The benefit of historical fiction, picture books, and graphic novels for middle school social studies students, an action research study. The purpose of this study is to look at the feasibility of using historical short fiction, picture books, and graphic novels as supplements to the expository text in a middle or high school classroom. The goal of the action research is to ascertain whether or not students' grades will increase by using these materials. This particular study was conducted over a period of 3 weeks in February and March of 2014 among 50 7th grade World Geography students at a Department of Defense Education Activities School in Sasebo, Japan. First, the population of the class as a whole was looked at to see if there is interest in using the materials and if the output increased as a result of this use. This was followed by a look at the effect of the study and materials on any special needs students, which included those with individual education plans, ESL learners, and special education students. The research question is, how will the use of historical short story fiction, picture books, and graphic novels in conjunction with the requisite text improve interest, comprehension, and output in the social studies classroom? The idea of using historical short fiction and picture books is not a new one. Teachers have been doing this for as many as 30 years, if not longer. Articles have been written on the benefits of using these materials as supplements, but the amount of actual studies that have been conducted to show the effect are much less prevalent. As a genre, historical fiction is best defined as any work of fiction that takes place in a historical past and drives the plot of the story. Drawbacks of historical short fiction are that it's more difficult to read for ESL students, and students who aren't particularly fond of reading may be reluctant to use the material. On the other hand, the benefits of using this type of material is it lets students see how the fiction and fact fit together. Students will also gain more of an interest in history as they read historical short stories and know that there are historical facts and human aspect that go together. It's just not some bland dates and places that they're required to study. It also helps students engage in reading, increases their background knowledge, and draws a visual picture of what life was like and how people may have lived in a certain historical era. In defining a picture book, it is any fiction or non-fiction story that uses both words and pictures to tell the story. In a picture book, the words could stand alone, but the illustrations enhance the experience of the book. The biggest drawback to using picture books simply may be perception with students, administrators, and teachers. With teachers, it is possible that they will feel that as experts in their particular subject, it's kind of insulting to use picture books to help students learn. Administrators may also look upon the picture books as problematic, feeling the teacher is giving the students material that is far too easy. And student perception of using picture books could be the biggest obstacle to their success, as they may find it insulting that we are asking them to use picture books to help them learn. The benefit of using picture books outweighs the drawbacks in several ways. One is the shorter format of these books makes it easier to assimilate them into the lessons that are prepared. Also, as the newer generation of students are more visually oriented due to the prevalence of technology, movies, and computers and everything else, the pictures will help them in comprehending the material. If you're a social studies or history teacher and students seem bored, well-written and illustrated picture books can capture the imagination of these students. Also, it is possible that many students can make connections based on cultural backgrounds or just everyday occurrences they find in their lives. Picture books will also give the teacher the opportunity to differentiate by giving students choices of books to read as they are related to the material that they are teaching. And the illustrations in picture books can help in supporting comprehensions for the students who struggle, be they IEP or ESL learners. What is a graphic novel? When somebody looks at a graphic novel, the first thing that they will think of is a comic book, which is essentially what a graphic novel is. However, it's not something along the lines of Batman or Captain America. Many graphic novels are recreations from history or classic literature, and with this in mind, teachers can use graphic novels in different ways, whether as supplements or standalone texts. There are really two possible drawbacks in using graphic novels. The first is perception, the second is over-reliance. With perception, there may be teachers, administrators, and librarians who will not allow them to be used or kept in the classroom because they don't consider them to be real literature. As far as over-reliance, the catch that could possibly happen is that teachers could fall into the trap of using them too much, and students may over-rely on graphic novels as educational text instead of just as supplements. The benefits of graphic novels basically are students usually don't have to be pushed to read these. They are very popular. They can also be beneficial to struggling readers such as ESL students. The images in a graphic novel can help students comprehend and understand the material, much like picture books do. Graphic novels are not just comic books. Graphic novels have been constructed around classic literature and historical events and may be easier for students to read than the actual historical text itself. When looking at the methodology, the material covered in doing the action research was Africa. All the students in the world geography classes did the same thing. They used the same materials, be it picture books, graphic novels, or short story fiction. They were given pre-interest surveys for the course and the content, and they were also given a Likert scale survey to determine what they thought of short story fiction, picture books, and graphic novels. After the initial class of the unit where all the surveys were done, in each subsequent class, the first 20 minutes of time was spent in groups reading the various materials, followed by direct instruction and discussion. Students were asked to share any information they may have learned on the day's topic from the supplementary material. At the end of the 3-week study, the students were given a test. The data from the test was compared to scores from previous unit tests. Each class was given post-unit surveys to gauge their interest, and each class was given a post-Likert survey to see if their attitude in the materials changed from before they first used them. This is a look at the World Geography Africa pre-unit survey. The main focus was the first two questions: what is your feeling on studying African world geography, and what is your overall feeling on the subject of world geography? The goal was to find out how the students possibly felt about both the unit and the course. The next few slides to be seen here are the Likert surveys for historical short fiction, picture books, and graphic novels. This is the post-unit survey on world geography in Africa, which you can see is very similar to the pre-unit survey. And the Likert surveys for the exit were the same as the surveys when they first started the use of the materials. The materials used in the course of the survey are listed here. It was much easier to find picture books and even graphic novels more so than historical short fiction on Africa. The books used, Message from Africa and The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, were beneficial, though the students enjoyed reading them. Cartoon History of the Universe is a series, and Exploring Our World in Graphic Novel is a supplement that already exists to the textbook the students use in the classroom. The picture books listed were all taken out of the school library. The results of the data will be evaluated by category: first subject, then topic, followed by historical short fiction, picture books, graphic novels, output, and then a look at ESL learners. The results for the subject, world geography, and the topic, Africa, were based on 3 different categories: excited, interested, and indifferent. In the world geography category, in the pre-survey, 16 students were excited, 31 students were interested, and 3 students were indifferent to world geography. In the post-survey, 17 students were excited, 32 students were interested, and the indifferent number dropped to 1. There was more movement in the numbers for the topic, Africa. In the pre-survey, 2 were excited, 39 interested, and 9 indifferent. In the post-survey, the numbers changed to 9 students excited, 38 interested, and only 3 students being indifferent to the topic. The surveys for historical short fiction, picture books, and graphic novels were done using Likert scale surveys. The ratings were strongly disagree 1, disagree 2, neutral 3, agree 4, and strongly agree 5. In tallying the results for all 3 supplements used, they were broken down first as whole group or all students, and then discerned by gender, and finally looked at as ESL students. In the pre-survey for historical fiction, the students came off as rather cool to the idea of using these supplements, with more disagreeing that a teacher would give historical fiction to them with the belief that it would help them. In their view, it was likely a teacher would have used the material as busy work. In the post-survey, the students clearly changed their position and agreed that the material would be useful and the teacher would give them historical fiction knowing it would help them. The survey also indicated, though, that they were cooler to the idea of using the supplement, even believing it would be helpful. When looking at the data between the boys' and girls' responses, both groups agreed the teacher would use historical fiction to benefit them. The boys liked the supplement but do not think it will help them, whereas the girls do believe the use of material will help them. With picture books, maybe the most telling number in this survey comes from Statement A, in which students thought that picture books were something to be used by kindergartners and first grade students. In the pre-survey, the answer was more to neutral at the idea of using them, whereas in the post-survey, that number was closer to being in disagreement. This is likely because the students found that picture books were not what they expected. On the exit survey, quite a few of the students commented that they had thought of baby books when they were thinking of picture books, but were surprised to find that these picture books actually had a lot of written information. In comparing the boys and girls surveys responses, there was very little change. The exception to this is in Statement C, where both the boys and the girls' scores went up in belief that the teacher would give them picture books because they would be helpful. For the girls, Statement C had a near double increase in its score, and the girls went from a near neutral position in the belief that picture books were for kids to disagreeing with this statement. The girls' score also went from near neutral to agreeing that picture books are something they are interested in and will help them understand the material. Ultimately, the girls more open to using the picture books than the boys. In the end, the results indicate that both boys and girls were inclined to accept the use of picture books as a supplement to the expository text. The first question in the graphic novel pre-survey asked if students knew what a graphic novel was. Pretty much they did. The students also leaned to the idea that graphic novels were something that could be used in a social studies class and would be helpful in learning the material. Overall, the students also fell between a feeling of neutrality and agreement as to whether or not graphic novels would help them to understand the material better. In the post-survey, the students tended to believe that graphic novels are good to be used in social studies class and that they were helpful to them in learning the material that was covered. The overall score rose in which students believed that graphic novels could help them learn subject material better and students would be willing to use graphic novels more. Just as with historical fiction and picture books and historical short fiction. When looking at the results between boys and girls for graphic novels, it is found that both group scores went down from the pre- and post-survey in the belief that graphic novels should be used in the classroom. Both groups agree the teacher would give graphic novels knowing the supplement would be useful in learning the material, but here boys were more open than girls to using the supplement. Both groups indicated that they believed that using the supplement graphic novels help them understand the content better. One final measurement used to determine if using these supplemental materials were helpful was in test score output. In looking at the scores from the previous unit, which focused on the Middle East, it can be found that out of 50 students measured, 18 scored an A, 20 scored a B, and 16 scored it a C. There were no D's or F's. By contrast, the scores for the Africa unit were similar, but there was a downward trend in B grades and an uptick in C grades. A, D, and F grades remained constant. It could be surmised that the materials were less helpful based on grades alone. However, the enthusiasm shown by many students to read the supplemental materials indicates they may have some use. There were 3 ESL students who were part of the study, and overall they were not against historical short fiction and believed it could help them, but at least one student did not care for the supplement. With picture books, the ESL students showed a receptiveness to using the material, and this is obvious with all students scoring strongly agree to this statement. The idea of using picture books is something I am interested in, and I believe it is possible they will help me to understand the subject content better. With graphic novels, the students are interested in reading them as they believe it will help them. However, they were not interested in using them during class, so it might be an idea to use them as extra work outside of the classroom. In evaluating the test grade output, it can be inferred the supplemental materials aided the ESL students. On the previous unit final test, the 3 students scored 2 grades of C with 1 D. On the Africa unit final test, the students scored 1 A, 1 B, and 1 C. This would indicate that a minimum of 2 students increased their output, and possibly all 3 students. It is a realistic possibility that supplements made a difference in the output of all 3 students. In conclusion, though the students enjoyed the project, ultimately this study did not deliver an outcome of overwhelming evidence that the use of the 3 supplements, historical fiction, picture books, and graphic novels, would greatly or even moderately increase output in a social studies classroom. The students would be interested in continuing to use the material, with the boys more focused on using graphic novels as being helpful, and girls with picture books and historical fiction as being helpful. The end recommendation after conducting this study is that it was too small and that it needs to be done on a larger scale in a wider geographic area for a longer period of time to possibly generate better data and outcomes.